Now, some of you know about Food What, and some of you don't. So for the folks who do, hang with me for a second, and for the folks who don't, I want to just give you a thumbnail sketch. Otherwise, when we get into the how, you won't have the context. So I'm going to start with that. Food What is a youth empowerment program. So at the core and the center of what we're doing is about youth. It's about empowerment. We're using food and farming. That's our tool, that's our vehicle. It also ends up being a set of outcomes. But we have two sites, two farm sites, one here in Watsonville on Green Valley Road at Live Earth Farm, and one in North County on the UCSE farm. And we run 3 seasons of programs with youth. And when we say youth, we work with high school youth. We work with predominantly low-income youth, who are some of the most resilient youth in the county. And they come to the farm, and we have a graduated leadership model where they start with a spring internship, leads to a summer job training program, and then it goes on to a fall management set of programs. And so what are we actually doing? We're farming, we're cooking, we're growing food, but we're really growing ourselves, and we're building community. So that's a lot of what you're going to hear about today. And in the spirit of time, what are some of the outcomes or the impacts that youth experience through their time at Food What? Well, one is in our name. There's some really radical diet change. So we see young people who come in with hot Cheetos and very typical teen diet and walk out talking about how much they love salad. And that is remarkable to watch. And we also see really key job training success. But the most important thing that we see, which is kind of the umbrella over both of those, is this personal growth, this transformation, these turning points, this agency building, this resiliency, this identity formation. And that's what we're going to talk a lot about today. So I want to just ground us with one more thing about Food What, and then we'll dive in. So our team, we really think about Food What as a space. We talk about youth empowerment not as something that we do to youth. We don't say, oh, we empower youth. We talk about Food What as a space where youth choose to step into that path for themselves, where they choose empowerment as a pathway towards something that they are looking for or seeking for or find nourishment in. Now, how we create that space, how we program that space, how youth choose to use that space, that's what we're going to unpack this afternoon. That's a lot of what today's about. That's what the research really illuminates, and that's what we're very excited to share with you. So what are we about to do? Hopefully you ate, you talked. I saw a few people dancing. That's wonderful. We'll put the music back on when you leave. We're going to start right off with a youth panel to kind of ground us in youth voice. And then we're going to invite up Morton to present. There he is. Thank you. He's hard to miss. He's going to present his research, kind of center us in the day. And then we're going to have a fair amount of time for Q&A, because we're assuming that that part of the conversation will really take us to the next level. So the goals for today were really to offer our community, offer all of you a model that works and the research behind it, but specifically the elements that are within it that you could draw on in your work. So today is not so much about Food What. It's really about you. It's really about your work, and it's really about what we're doing in community. I'd even say it transcends just the topic of youth, although so many of you in the room are from education. And the second goal is really to inspire everybody in the room to dig into this content in your work, to see how you could apply it. So this is an amazing room of people, and I think the best thing we could do is just go at it. Yeah, let's do it.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here. My name is Irene, or Irene, and I am one of the Food What Programs managers, and I will be facilitating the youth panel right now. You want to introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Uriel, and I'm here with Food What. I'm part of the staff, and I did the program and became an alumni and came back.
Hi everyone, I'm Eustolia and I've been part of Fieldwell for 2 years now.
Hi everyone, I'm Mike. I use they them pronouns and I've been part of the program since 2017.
Thank you. The first question is, how did you get involved with Food What?
So it was funny because when Jerome showed up to PV and advocating on food, what? Oh, you guys should join. The only thing that got my attention was the part where he said, "Oh, you'll get to cook and eat." And so he really, well, you're in high school. You don't really think about a lot of things other than, oh, the casual thing. I'm going to go out tonight or go do this or that. And so I think the aspect of food really got my attention. That was the one thing that I was like, I don't care about the rest. I'll go try the food.
So I was accidentally part of Fieldwell. And I remember I was in English class. We were discussing about a book, and I just received an envelope saying, "Congratulations, you're part of Fieldwell, of Spring Internship." And I was really confused, and I would double check if it was my name, but it turned out it was mine, and it also turned out that my sister, she applied me, and I'm thankful for her because I think I wouldn't have been here.
I became part of Food What through my cousin Jorge. Like, did it like one of the first years it started. So like, I just like always heard him talking about it, and like him like starting a like garden at my abuela's house like really inspired me. And I was like a senior at Costa Noa at the time, and like I don't know, I was just looking for something to do and like stay out of trouble. So and like yeah, free food and you got paid, so
All right, my next question is, how do you explain Food What to someone who doesn't know about it?
I always like answering this question because to me, Food What is really like an incubator. And I always give the same example. I think Jerome's probably tired of hearing it, but so this is how I put it, right? So you get an egg and you put it into this incubator, which we call Food What. And so Food What can change it, can make the outcome be something else. Whatever comes out is what already was there. It just got that little extra push, to either come out or to fully develop. So to me, yeah, I want to echo what Jerome said. Food What doesn't empower anyone so much as give them the opportunity to empower themselves.
Food What is a safe environment where you feel safe and comfortable, but also you get to learn like planting or harvesting vegetables and fruits and making bouquets with flowers. And you get to learn the basic of culinary arts, like cooking outside with local chefs and creating meals to enjoy. You also get to meet like other peers or youth from Santa Cruz County, and you just become part of a family or friendship.
yeah, Food What is definitely a family to me, and they've always been there for me in like multiple ways, and it's like a support system if you want it to be, but it's also just like it's really whatever you want it to be. You could see it as a job, you could see it as a family, but at the end of the day, like everyone there is like there for you whenever. But yeah, it's a great place to learn and grow and like expand your knowledge about new things.
My next question is, if Food What played a role in your journey to get to where you are now, can you share how?
Yeah, a lot of times we think of like, oh, it was that one little decision that got me here today, right? And so, like I said, Food What didn't change me. Instead, it gave me the tools that felt like I needed to come back and be able to advocate. And so, I received these questions a couple weeks ago, and I was thinking to myself, what have I done since then? And there's been some big highlights, and I was the campaign manager for the new mayor. Where is he? So that's a big highlight. But there's also been other. I think the bigger one for me has been the empowerment that I've received or that I took upon myself, and then gave it back to students. Because I'm gonna be a future educator, and so far I've been just working through this program where I'm a tutor, and so through this opportunity I've been able to pass on the skill sets that I've learned, pass on that just even being a cheerleader to these students, and just seeing them succeed. And I don't think I would have been able to take my own empowerment and give it back to students if I hadn't received it first, right? And so I think Food What really pushed me in the way of like, oh look, this is how we can empower you, and then I can give it back to the students now. And that to me is one of the most special things when you see that child being, so conflicted because they can't do something, and then all of a sudden it clicks in and you see that smile on their face. And so to me it all ties back, and it started here at Food What.
Food What had a big role in my life. I was this depressed, grieving, suicidal girl, and when I became part of the spring internship, it kind of focused me on. Well, it was like slowly changing me of who I wanted to be, and I'm happy to say that I am a strong, independent young woman who is capable of doing anything she puts her mind to it. Also, they kind of help me with they kind of inspire me to become a culinary nutritionist to help my community health. And I just love being around them.
I think like around the summertime of like my first year with Food What, so during like the summer program, is when I started coming to terms with like my queer identity as like not only as like a transgender person, but also as like a just queer person in general. And Food What was there for me like every step of the way. When like other people in my life made me feel like I couldn't fully be myself. So it was really beautiful to make that step. And I ended up like starting college that next like in the fall. And I don't know, at first I was like, I don't know if this is for me, like college, but now I just feel like more and more inspired, like with the more stories I hear of like queer people of color, like just going against the system and thriving through it and doing what they need to do. And so I've been really like inspired through Food What. And also like this year I was part of a crew like of students who organized getting a career resource center at the Cabrillo Aptos campus. So I'm super proud to say that. And I also recently, thank you. I recently started a job with Happy Boy Farms, which is like a primarily queer farm here in Watsonville. And I'm super hyped to just be accepted and have loving people around me. And I just want to use this platform too to just inspire you all to like really be aware of your actions around marginalized folks, especially queer people, and to, treat them like a human, treat them like they're your sibling, because everyone deserves a chance. And yeah, so I think it's really important to ask people's pronouns, be aware of their identities, use the name that they want to use, not a name that they used before, and really take it upon you to make that change and be there for that person.
Thank you. My final question is, can you share with us one thing that you're most proud of for yourself?
With the top of my head, graduating Cabrillo tomorrow. So. So, but I'll be here all day if I start. You know, I guess I'll just share the one from, it happened on Tuesday night. So I was working for this program, and it got unfortunately shut down. And so, but the drawback was that they had empowered the parents so much that they wouldn't be quiet that night. So they kept advocating for, oh no, let's do this and do this. But the people who were there as directors, they just didn't listen. And so they offered me to be placed at a different site, but I ended up saying that I quitted to go and advocate on behalf of these parents as well. You know, I basically pointed myself as their guide to going and seeing what we can do, we can get the program back. And so that to me was a real testament of how far I've come, because I don't think 2 or 3 years ago I would have been in the same position, you know, being an employee and having the courage to just get up, quit, and be like, oh, you know what? They won't listen to you, but I will. And yeah, maybe I don't know what I'm doing, but we'll get there together. So that was my...
What I've been proud of myself lately, but not right now. I still need a bit to accomplish. But something that I'm really proud of was becoming junior staff with FoodWhat, because it also made me grow as person, and it made me be more happier and have more confidence in myself, and just encouraged me to not putting the opportunity downs. And that's it for right now.
One main thing I feel really proud of is, like, I guess just like getting through high school, like, and graduating. It's like not easy, especially with like just facing a lot of stuff, a lot of trauma, coming to terms with a lot of stuff in my past. And like I think every day we're healing from something, and every day we're still growing. So I guess I'm really proud of myself for living another day, as everyone else should be too.
I want to say thank you to our brilliant panelists and acknowledge you for your courage and your openness. So if we can give everyone here a round of applause. Can you bring this in front of me? You can sit right here. I just want to share a few words as the program's manager. I want to acknowledge you all for taking the time to really practice listening to young people. Chances are, if you're in the room right now, you probably have a very big heart, and you know that it's important to center and uplift youth. But can you say why? For me, it's so difficult to articulate why it is that I choose this work. It feels impossible to share how it feels when I have the opportunity to observe a young person stepping courageously into their power and remembering their greatness. It feels impossible to put into words how it feels when I hear a young person say, I did a good job, after hearing them so often doubt themselves. It feels so hard to put into words how it feels when I hear one of our junior staff say, I used to be a follower, now I know I'm capable of so much more. One of the greatest gifts of this role is the opportunity through my relationships that I have to witness youth in their process, to witness a young person move through the barriers, the pain, the struggle, the layers of intergenerational trauma that has told them on a very deep level that they are not enough. To witness a young person decide for themselves that they are worthy and deserving of being heard and seen for all of the wisdom they carry. To witness a young person claim identity beyond simply just student or employee or worker or consumer. And to witness a young person practice self-determination, to know that they can change their life, influence their family, and impact their community. Every day at Food What, I am reminded of the ways that that youth really hold valuable pieces of the puzzle that is our collective liberation. And every day I'm reminded that I have the privilege and responsibility to greet every teen and young adult that comes through Food What's door with the utmost respect, love, and trust. I'm also reminded that the way we work together, the way we play together, the way we co-curate meaningful space together feels like healing. And at the end of the day, I feel nourished and transformed too. So I want to thank every single Food What member I've had the privilege to work with, and I want to thank these brilliant beings here on the panel again today. You help me remember that your freedom is inextricably linked with mine, and that is work worth doing. So that's a little bit about my why, and I want to invite you all to bring into the room right now, what's your why? Why do you do the work that you do? Because our whys are important. So I invite that in, and I encourage you to sit with that and hold on to that as we move into Morton's presentation, where he'll talk a little bit about the how. So thank you very much for your listening.
So by way of a quick story, and then we'll invite up Morton. So this 6'3" white dude from Denmark walks into my office. This is not a joke. This is actually the story of how I met Morton. Sounds like a joke. And he says, so my national government, the education department, has tasked me with finding a nonprofit organization in the United States that works at the intersection of youth empowerment, food and farming, and critical youth pedagogy. And I've done extensive research, and I've chosen you. Would you like to work with me? So I said, shoot, that's a hot first date, right? Like, what do you say to that other than, okay, let's drill in. So that's what we did. That was 6-7 years ago. And it is my incredible pleasure to invite up Dr. Morton Coleman-Nelson to share the how Food What does what it does.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, take care. Okay, thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of my research, the background, why I did it, and how I did it, and what came out of it. So it's a question about boiling 300 pages of a PhD down to 5 slides in 25 minutes. So here we go. So my name is Morten Kromann-Nielsen, and I'm an educational researcher from Denmark, UCL University College, based in Odense, not far away from Copenhagen. I am trained as a social anthropologist, and though my PhD is a very recent thing, I have been doing 20 years of educational research and development in the area of food-based learning, try to integrate it into our different training programs of teachers and social educators and social work. And I've been leading several national government-based programs in the area. Apart from being a social anthropologist, I also consider myself as an educational anthropologist and as a youth researcher. So, the applied relevance of this study is very much based in what we call in Denmark the motivational crisis in our current education system. We have a lot of not very positive evidence that about 20% of the youth who enter into or leave the 9th grade of our public school system, they have kind of lost their motivation to learn. They haven't got out of school what they're supposed to do. So we have what we call a burning platform. We really need to try to do something else in this area when it comes to youth education. Then we also have especially challenge around the youth that have an immigrant or refugee background in our society to help them succeed and see a future as members of our democracy. And it's especially the boys that are really in trouble in finding their ways. So there's a lot of motivation in the applied kind of aspect of doing this research. And then we also have a vision, and not only now, it's not only me as a person, it's also the crew of colleagues and collaboration partners around me. We have gathered a national initiative to try to translate this work into a Danish context. And it's only on a sketchboard, but we are trying to raise funds to try it out in 4 to 5 municipalities across the country with different socio-demographic contexts. And did I say 5 years? We have a 5-year kind of framework to test it out, and me as a researcher in that process. And so this is a PhD study, so there's also needs to have a scientific relevance, and that stems primarily from me looking through the area of research, what is actually there at the moment, programs like this, how have they been researched and with what methods and what results. And one finding was that there was very, very little research in the area. So that kind of points to there needs to be done something, because this is too interesting, too important, actually not to be researched and documented from science, from social science. So yes, next slide, please. So that leads me to the research question, the question that actually has guided my 4.5-year work in this endeavor. And that is, I will read it up. It is how can a food systems and farming-based pedagogical practice function as an educational framework for supporting critical reflexivity, agency, identity formation, and learning among structurally disadvantaged youth. So this is kind of what I have tried to answer, and I haven't answered it in one row. I have broken it down into 3 sub-questions. And the first is, it goes to my general curiosity of the relevance of the food and farming framework, and it is what is the ostensible impact of that framework, food and farming. And the second one goes to the pedagogical element of the program, so it's the staff perspective. And here the questions are, what values, choices, and strategies do staff reflect and act upon, and so on. And the next one is kind of I would say the most interesting question is, what is actually the youth learning perspective on this? How do youth develop critical reflexivity, agency, and identity formation? And those concepts are not coincidental. They actually come up from the theoretical framework that guides my study, which is, apart from educational anthropology and critical youth studies, it's also critical pedagogy. So the area of education that actually has democratic participation as a goal. So yeah, that were my questions, and my methods was, as a social anthropologist, my main method is field work. It's actually to take part in the everyday life of the local setting, in this context, the program, over a longer time period, in order to actually get an insider perspective of what's going on here. It's also the way to build relations, to build confidence, and actually to make people, in this case youth and staff, feel that they can actually share their experiences with me. And so that's what I did, and I did a lot of interviews throughout 1 year of core participation, which was first 7 months, then 6 weeks, and then 6 weeks again. So actually out of the 4 years and a half, I've spent 1 year in Santa Cruz and also here in Watsonville doing field work. So I did 8 interviews with staff and 39 interviews with a cohort of 9 youth of the 2014 program. It means that I interviewed the same youth again and again and again. So I have approximately 4 or 5 6 interviews actually with the same youth. So that gives me a chance to actually explore a process and a possible change. And because I was very not surprised, but I was very overwhelmed by the big changes that actually took place within the first 7, 8, 9 months of the first year, I was very curious. What happens in the longer time span? Does this learning, all these transformations and turning points that youth were talking about, do they last once they get out of the safe space of the program? So I decided to do a follow-up study in 2015 with 5 other youth that had followed various different paths since leaving the program. So that's also incorporated in my thesis. And then actually right now, because I still am very curious about what is the impact of this program in a longer time span, I'm doing a follow-up study with the same youth from 2015. It's too early for me to say something about that because it needs to be analyzed, but I have some findings from the other. Yes, next please. And I need a glass of water. So this is actually the most important slide. This is where I will spend the most of the rest of the time of my presentation. So this kinds of sketches or models the main finding of my research, which is where I have tried to systematize all the over 700 pages of interview material, which is quite a lot, you can see. Reading it, interpreting it, coding it, and try to have it enter into dialogue with theory, with educational theory, with theory from critical pedagogy. And one thing that was, that you can say that the big picture here is there are different forms of learning taking place in this program. And that is very interesting to see how they are related. And to start at the end, so to say, what is it that came out at the late stage interviews, and especially in the follow-up interviews after the first year? Well, it is that there is really a profound change going on, and it seems to last among the youth when they reflect back upon the program experience 1 year earlier. And the thing is here that many youth, it totally reflects the wonderful stories of the youth in the panel here before. It is, to a very high degree, something that the youth consider as being a turning point in their life, as life-changing, as bringing about resources that they had, but now, but they didn't had the opportunities, the framework to actually show them and develop them fully and integrate them in their lives. So these kind of life-changing thing, it covers many different paths of change. It covers newfound motivation to actually engage in education. It covers courage to actually integrate your sexual identity or gender identity into who you are, or expressing it, or radical diet change is all of them talking about in different ways. It's also about, just changes, so many changes in so many levels. And I just, another thing that also was interesting when they looked back on and when I asked them what happened to you in the program, they said, well, I was actually surprised what it actually was about. When I first entered into the program, I thought it was about learning how to cook and job training and so, but it turned out to change me. So it turned out to be identity formative. And that led me to actually borrow a model from critical pedagogy that actually tries to distinguish between different forms of pedagogy and learning. So this is actually, when I call it a relevance continuum, it's about there's relevance produced at so many levels and so many stages in the program, but it's a continuum. It's something that happens slowly. It evolves throughout the different phases that youth participate in. And in critical pedagogy, there's a very widely discussed, but it's a framework that actually makes sense in order to understand the role of education in society. And it distinguishes between an instrumental pedagogy, a communicative pedagogy, and an emancipatory pedagogy. And the way I kind of applied it to my data, it made so much sense to actually try to explain what is it that in the program that makes all this change come by? What is it that makes youth actually develop the courage, the determination, the joy of actually getting out of their comfort zones or actually showing who they really are and want to be. And that is explained in this model because the program starts with, I would call, the instrumental pedagogy and learning. This is actually where you see the job training dimension of the program. It's the work, the food and farming and cooking that is such a central part of the program activity and pedagogy. But it's also the stipend, the pay, the job training, the credits, and all the networks that youth can get from this. These things are instrumental to their ongoing kind of journey in life, in society, in education system, and so on. And the thing is that when youth talk about this as the initial motivation to apply, they all almost feel, not ashamed, I don't know the right word, but they say, actually it was the stipend, it was a pay, but now it's something completely different, actually. But it's perfectly legit, I would say. You are inspired. There's a stipend here, there's some credits for high school completion and so on, which is it's a very good way of actually introducing youth and kind of paving the path for something else to come. So the instrumental pedagogy has a very big role in this, in my opinion, in my analysis. And the next one is the communicative pedagogy. This is actually where all the dialogue and communication takes place. This is where youth are invited to reflect upon what they do and do it in an atmosphere where they actually learn different techniques to give feedback, to receive feedback. In the beginning, it's very much centered on the working, the performance in the field, so it's about mastering the skills, it's about how to do this right, how to collaborate as a team, how to actually be responsible as a co-worker. And also the different invitations that youth experience in this area is about slowly finding their voice. So it's like the first invitations are public speaking workshop. I think the first prompt here is how do you make your favorite sandwich? And though for many think, oh, that's an easy thing to talk about, for many youth that's actually extremely challenging just to open their mouth in this space of other youth and so on. And that's also a continuous pattern in my research, how youth tell about how this voice finding was something that really boosted for them in the program. And the important thing here is that it starts with something that is very, so to say, neutral in a way. It's about a sandwich, and then slowly it develops about be more personal, be more emotional things, actually sharing youth the struggles that they have in their lives. And one big point that I could speak a lot more about if I had the time is the central element of storytelling in the program. So it's not only just public speaking and do a presentation or how to actually communicate as a professional, which are extremely important, but it's also how it's integrated into a wider idea of storytelling, which is actually about identity. If you study identity and you want to do it, you have to be interested in narratives and the stories people tell about their lives. So that's why storytelling is such a powerful tool, the way it's pedagogically integrated in the program, because you are invited to actually tell their own stories and retell their stories. And then kind of that leads the explanation to why the program to the high degree succeeds in actually establishing an emancipatory learning, which is about change, which is about finding yourself in a new identity. And if you look to the right, you see kind of some more general interpretations of the relations between these different kinds of pedagogy and learning. And I think it's important to say what stands to the right here, the foundations for actually succeeding in building a safe space that youth talk about, where they actually feel space, where they feel safe, where they feel trusted and so on. It is so much based in the way the program is built upon the instrumental. It's the co-work, it's the collaboration. It's also where you actually find a place where it's predictable what you're going to do. The expectations that are towards you, they are transparent. They're easy to decipher and so on. And then slowly that builds kind of the basis for actually creating a change, where it's about invitations. So it's not a right way to do it based on old knowledge about farming and cooking and so on. Now it's more open to who you want to be and what you want to share. So you can say it's more unpredictable, more risky, but in a sense that it is a safe space that is socially constructed. And which is also interesting when you look at critical literature about safe space. It says that safe space is so many places, it's a rhetoric, it's something that you say it is, but actually succeeding in creating it a safe space and making it experienced as a safe space, that's a very big challenge. And to my finding here, I would say this is one of the things that the program actually succeeds in doing, because it allows youth to develop into this very slowly over a time, and through this collaboration in the field and the relation building between youth and staff, which is kind of the core of why it's possible. Yes. And this is just a little bit, it's more of exemplifying, can you say that in English? Yeah. That led to this big model I talked about before. Those are the two patterns in the data that kind of caught my attention when I was reading through my material, that goes around food and it goes around voice. And you can see all different forms of learning in these topics. First, food. I think it's very interesting the way farming and cooking and eating is a very embodied learning space in the program. It's not something you are learning by listening to it, it's something you learn by engaging with your body in the work. And it's very concrete. It depends. An example is the way youth talk about how actually the farm work is so strenuous, it's so hard, it's so challenging, but they grow with the challenge, so to say. And it's interesting the way they both talk about becoming mentally stronger and physically stronger in the same kind of context. But it's also a very, you can say, concrete way of learning about thirst and appetite and the relevance of actually eating and eating the relevant food, because you can't perform if you don't eat regularly. It's very difficult to perform in the field if you haven't had breakfast, and you get a headache if you don't drink water. Those are the learnings youth talk about, and it's so integral to the way the program is actually building this awareness, I would call the critical reflexivity of your own bodily needs in relation to your performance. And then there's another thing that is very interesting, which is very contrastive to the experience youth have around eating in their daily lives. It's the social meal in the program and the way it is a central part of the summer program. Every day they eat together for half an hour. And it's actually when youth talk about how different that is from what they experience elsewhere, where they're used to eat alone in their rooms or in front of the TV and not have an especially kind of conscious relations to their food. Now it's suddenly about the social space around eating, and actually you can choose where to sit, and as they say, it's actually the best place to get to know people is when they eat. So it's also a big driver in the diet change, is there's actually the social meal that has such a role in the program. And then finally the workshops. This is kind of where the practical word is giving the more theoretical, the more wider systems perspective. So why are we actually doing organic farming, and how is actually the choices we get as consumers in our local community, why can we get that and not that, and so on and so on. So there are also some it's not that there are answers to, but important questions are being put to the table in these workshops. And that also invites youth to see their own situation in a wider perspective. Again, for me, I think it's a very good example of the program as succeeding in actually creating a basis for democratic participation, because it puts your own life experience in a wider context of society, and invites you to believe in that you can actually engage in discussions about these things in a democratic process and actually change things. And the next one is a voice, which is very much also a big pattern in the data, the way youth talk about stepping into their voice, finding their voice, and the whole way the program, through starting reflecting on how do you perform in the field, and then suddenly through all these feedback techniques and poetry workshop, and where youth are invited also to share a lot of more things if they are willing and ready to do it. So it is again a space where when youth feel they are safe, they can actually use it to show things of themselves that they wouldn't have dared to show in other contexts. And that can feel very empowering and emancipatory. So communication and the whole dynamic between the instrumental and the communicative and the emancipatory is also very interesting. So that leads me to my final. How many minutes have I left? 8? Okay. I'm speaking too fast. Okay. So the major findings is like reflecting my questions. So what was the relevance of the food and farming framework? I would say it's a pedagogical practice that uses food and farming to establish a safe space with reference to 2 interpretive frameworks: job training and food justice and food systems thinking. So this is actually some of the interesting findings. That's what I forgot to say when I was talking about the continuum. In critical pedagogical discourse and discussions, it's often kind of assumed that you cannot have an instrumental pedagogy in the same educational context as an emancipatory. It's either or. But I have found, would say that it's actually what the program succeeds in doing. It combines both agendas of education. It both reproduces things in society, and it creates a basis for actually democratic participation and change. So that's actually why I've decided, and I'm actually going to write an article an article about it to a journal, and because I think it's such an interesting discussion, finding that you can actually, if you want to work with emancipatory, transformative pedagogy and learning, starting with the instrumental, with what is actually predictable, it's actually reproducing skills in society. It's not that much about questioning things, it's about learning things that are kind of, for instance, how to be, to function in a workplace, how to be in time, and so on, with the more emancipatory learnings that I talked about earlier. And definitely, the food and farming framework has been found to really produce a lot of relevance in youth lives, and is a powerful media to build relations and to invitations to push one's boundaries, because that's definitely also what the program is about, to get out of your comfort zone and express what you really want to do. But it is an invitation, and that's a very important point. And then the next question, which is also very interesting for me, is the staff perspective. I would say this is actually, for me, it's like an example of understanding the power dynamics in an empowerment process, because how is it that you transfer power from you as an adult to a youth? And it's also, I would say, it's a way staff can actually change their roles in this program that makes it possible. They start staff as hiring youth, they are employers, youth are hired, and they can be fired. But then from day one, or from day two that is, that power inequality, you can say, it changes. It gets slowly deconstructed as youth slowly are growing into these new roles where they actually more and more can take over responsibility and manage the tasks that are central to the program. So that's, again, a very interesting point, that you can actually transfer power in this way as it happens, and end up actually being acknowledged by the youth as a mentor. So it's not something you are from day one. You can't say, I'm a mentor. No, it has to be like safe space. It has to be socially established. It has to be developed through the relation building, and it takes time. But that's a point in itself. And the last thing, it's also a very condensed formulation, but I will read it up and then we'll try to unpack it a little. So what is the youth perspective? What is the learning about in this program? I would formulate it as there's a gradual increase in reflexivity that makes youth dare and decide to examine emotions, feelings, and perspectives, which produces agency and power to express themselves and develop new identities. So that is actually, I think I have repeated myself, but it's a gradual increase. It is the slowness of the program that actually makes this possible. And the invitations that are there when youth are ready to accept them, then it's there. The space is there. And it's very much about developing decision making. I think I didn't say that before. So the decision making is so crucial here. You can decide when you're ready, in your own pace. So agency is actually another word of saying empowerment. I've chosen it because it's a concept that is widely discussed in youth studies as something that is able to look for, that is interesting. But it's definitely important also the point of education as an identity formative thing is something I know many youth researchers have pointed to for many years, that formal education will gain so much more if it also creates space for identity work, because it is one of the main projects for youth. It's who am I and who can I be and who do I want to be. So that's also a big factor of the buy-in that I find, that I hear youth talk about. And it's especially also in the follow-up study I did 1 year after. This is actually so much a pattern that this program experience continues to be seen by the youth as a turning point. Something that actually, there was a before and there's an after. So I guess that was my words. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, take a deep breath, take it in. We are going to have an extensive Q&A period. I just wanted to share a few reflections from our team's part when we got this study. One of the things that struck us the most is the difference between those two frameworks at the poles, the instrumental and the emancipatory, that the instrumental is really the world we live in right now. And so when we do program design, we're really thinking about what does a young person need to succeed in the world as it is, right? Showing up on time, those core job skills, communication, those are things that are needed right now, exactly as the world is. But then, as they go through the communicative and they get to the emancipatory, that's the world that we would like to live in. That's the world that has justice. That's the world where young people are honored for who they are. Their traumas are in many ways not even experienced, right? There's so much there, and that spread is, I think, what makes our program so successful, is that we're doing both. We're doing both at once. And what I learned from Morton in a lot of the research is there's a lot of binary thinking that really you could only do one or the other. You could either be a very successful job training program, or you could be a really radical, emancipatory, engaging, fill in the blank, whatever you are. But what we found is actually you could do both. And when you do both, even that center part, that communicative, that's where so much of the power generation exists, because that's just the storytelling. And a lot of the times when we're prepping youth for any kind of public speaking, it's, there's nervousness. There's like, oh, how am I going to do? And the performance aspect. But we always try to ground it, especially like in a panel, which is, this is your truth. This is your story. In some ways, your prep is taking a breath, but there's nothing that you need to do other than be exactly who you are and choose what you want to share and what you don't want to share. So those are the three, that's one of the takeaways that we really got from it. And then another thing just came to mind when Morton was sharing. So on Tuesday, we had our big strawberry blast. So once a year, we work with all the districts. PVUSD sent 2 buses, one from PV and one from Watsonville. Santa Cruz City Schools had all the high schools and middle schools coming. We had somewhere around, we're expecting 300. I think we had 250 because of the rain. That felt very successful. Saw a lot of youth get off the bus in cotton T-shirts just as the sky opened up in rain, and I thought, let's see how this goes. And people had a great attitude. But there was a young man, Kimani, who is in a county office of ed school. He's doing independent studies because his family moved from Santa Cruz County over to San Jose, and he came back, and we just got into this really deep conversation about his experience last year. And he only did the spring. He didn't even get to the summer when we have, in some ways, we're the opposite of a lot of you in the room. We get to work with the youth in the summers. That's when we get to go deep because we have the most hours. Spring and fall is after school. So I was just asking Kimani, how's it feel to be back on the farm? And the first thing he did is he pointed to his white shoes, his bright white shoes, as he stood next to a puddle. And he said, well, I didn't know I was coming to the farm. And they said, well, we're going to take a field trip. And I'm like, I'm not going. And they said, is to food what? He's like, bet, I'm going. And I asked him just, how's it going? And he's somebody that I kept up with in the year and a half since he's been gone. And he said, it's interesting. When I started at Food What, I actually hated myself. And, that's such a hard thing to hear from anybody, right? Let alone somebody you care about. But I asked him, I was like, so what happened? And he said, from just being in a really positive place, doing good work, being around other youth that cared about something and having these conversations and making food and eating. So I could spend about an hour listing all the different elements that he did in that spring. I had a turning point. And I laughed because Sunday night, Morton and I went out to dinner, and I said to him, what do you call it in the research community when somebody has we call it a transformation at Food What? And in the funding community, we talk about transformations. What do you call it in the research community? He said, they're called turning points. So I'm like, wow. Okay, so he has so much social emotional intelligence that he just mapped out what my PhD researcher just helped me understand, right? So this young man was able to see that it wasn't even one moment, but it was just a series of experiences. So what I would offer in telling this whole story is that I think the success of what we're all striving to do is really in the complexity and being comfortable with that incredible amount of complexity, whether you're in a school and you have the complexity of the limitations of the classroom, if that's who you are in this room, the complexity as a funder, how are you using those resources? How are you inspiring organizations? What's the power dynamic there? If you're in social services, everybody in this room, I think there's so much that we could dig into if we're willing to be comfortable with the complexity and know that it's messy and know that sometimes we do good and sometimes we fall short. But every youth who could sit up here in this panel, and we invited 3, they would really talk to this complexity. So I invite you into that as you leave here today, is really think about where is this relevant to your work? What are the goals that you're bringing into the classroom or in philanthropy or in social services, or who are you? And how can you dig really deep into that complexity? How could you think about these different levels in your work and see the instrumental in what you do and see the communicative and the storytelling in what you do and really, hopefully, aim towards the emancipatory? So with that, I'd like to invite up the crew. They all look like bartenders. Come on up. And as they're coming up, I'll tell you one other story. So last night, if some of you have eaten at Companion Bakery, they have one in Santa Cruz and one in Aptos. They're friends of mine, Aaron and Jeremy, and they have 2 kids, and we did this event last night in Santa Cruz, and they showed up, and I was surprised to see them without their kids. I said, what are y'all doing? And I saw that they RSVP'd. They said, well, this is our date night. And I thought, wow. What a compliment. You're coming to a research presentation on emancipatory pedagogy as your date night? Good for you. Good for you. Way to model something. All right. So I'm going to pass the mic over to my partner here, Kayla, and we'll have about 15, 20 minutes for Q&A, and then we'll wrap up. Thanks.
All right, I should probably get over here. Hello, everyone. My name is Kayla. I am the development director here at Food What? And I'm sure there's some questions out there in the audience. And so I think what we'll do is if you have a question, if you can just share with us your name, if you're affiliated with an organization or an entity, and maybe speak up a little bit because we don't have a mic floating around. And if you could raise your hand, I'll call on you, like a teacher. Sorry. Oh, yes.
So the question is about how safe space was created.
Yeah, when I think of safe space, I always think of it as inviting people in and having it more of a, like, as a brave space and honoring, like, that person for being brave to enter that space at all, because you can't ensure that a space is going to be safe for someone. But it's really important to, like, accept that person, like, those people who are entering that space with whatever they have, whether it's in the past, whether it's something it's they're facing right now or something that's going to come up in the future, and really supporting them and giving them resources and letting them know that they're not alone. I think that's a really big thing, is like having other people that are going through similar things like that person is like what can be the most supporting. And so honestly for me is just like what was safe about the space was like the fact that I could tell Daron something or I could tell Irene something and they're not going to turn around and like tell like my parents or tell like, someone at my school because like, it might like jeopardize like my education or something like that. But they are there and they want to listen to me, and they're not getting the police involved. They're not getting these people involved that may make me feel unsafe and may make me feel like more harmed or want to hurt myself more. And so I think definitely being aware of like who you're telling to, like I think it's like who, like I wouldn't want someone like a staff member of FoodWhat sharing my information without asking me. And I think there's a lot of trust there too, is like thinking keeping things anonymously.
So I think it really comes down to how the program is set up to build a community, because obviously the safe place doesn't happen over the first day or over the second day, but as we all get to eat together, work together, have fun together, in a way we kind of invite each other to open up a little bit more. And so then the staff is also a great help, because you can look up to them and be sure that they could help support you in whatever way you need to. And so I really like that idea of building a community, because I feel like if you feel you're in a community, you open yourself up more and you have that opportunity to share more and to actually ask for help, because that's sometimes the hardest thing for anyone, is just to admit, oh, you know what, I need some help. And what better place to do that than in your own community?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think you could say, you mentioned the word bravery. I would say it's also the bravery of the staff to actually show themselves as whole persons that are so much more than the employer. And slowly, when youth are ready to actually come to them and share what they think, so they don't press youth to actually tell more than they want to do. So they are truly inviting, I would say. So it's also a question of authenticity as a whole person. I mean, to share personal struggles also as examples of how they have learned to actually do public speaking or whatever. They also learners. So it's actually also to have a role as a co-learner. And that is where I think the co-work is instrumental to that, because it helps youth actually feel supported first in the more practical help, and then as relations build and trust emerges, also to actually build on a more, it's kind of the dynamic behind being seen as a mentor. It's not something that happens from day one. It's also a process, but you can actually identify with a staff person, and there's a kind of inequality in that, which is also interesting. So yeah, there's so many things to it, but it's the short version.
One of the things that makes FoodWhat so much fun for me is all the games that we play. So on the very first day, we do a citrus name toss where we stand in a circle and we just have a big navel orange and we toss it in the air and you say, here you go, and whoever the name is, here you go, and then that person has to say thank you, whatever your name is, and then we go around, and then little by little we're adding more oranges, and then pretty soon everyone's saying each other's names and there's oranges flying around in the air. And it really, on the very first day, breaks the ice, right? Breaks down these guards that many of us have when we come into a new space. Maybe they know their peers, maybe they don't, maybe they're from a different school, but no matter who you are, where you're coming from, there's an orange flying at you, so you better act quick. And I think, starting the day off every day that we come to FoodWhat, playing a game, to be silly. And, just the other day I was blindfolded going through an obstacle course. Like, staff is playing in the games too. And we start off by doing very low-risk games, so games that people feel invited to, and there's always the option to opt out, right? We never force people to play. That doesn't make sense. And then little by little, the games build up to where there's more trust involved, and there's more risk involved. And so by the end of the spring, we're doing three-legged race and wheelbarrow races, and it sort of brings us to this level playing field where we're playing together. No matter if you're an adult, you're a youth, we're all just we're playing, and then eating together is one of those things that also we come together around this nourishment. We're nourishing our bodies, we're nourishing our spirits, and we're nourishing the sense of belonging, as many of us have been speaking to. So I hope that answers a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. The other thing we do the first day on both farm sites is we walk around the entire farm so folks know where they are as a grounding exercise. And I think so many of us move into so many spaces, and it's like, who am I in that space is one of the first questions that somebody could ask themselves. So to be able to understand everything that's happening, we're on large farmscapes with many, many layers going on. So that feels really essential to people understanding where they are and finding where they want to be in that space. That's one thing. And the other thing is we use the words relevance and context sometimes interchangeably, but that's a big driving force in our content creation. So even the very first day, one of the staff is walking youth around, and we're harvesting different herbs that we've all probably walked over a million times, like yarrow, and we talk about, or plantains, they're weeds basically, calendula, and we're harvesting them, and even there's an action, like Morton was speaking to, there's an embodiment there, there's a playfulness, there's a curiosity, what are we going to do with that? And then we dry them, and then in week 2 we make salves, and everybody goes home with a salve. So there's even a connection back. That's a big goal of ours, is that your experience is not your experience within the confines of Food What, right? Our bubble of Food What, but it's actually the experience within you that you travel with wherever you want to go. And I just want to add one more thing to play, because it's been surprising, actually, that we do icebreakers with the goal exactly as Irene shared. There was a young man a few years ago in the program who ended up being a boxer in high school. He's at the boxing school down here. And and when I asked him, like, why did you become a boxer? Like, what is it about boxing? Eventually, I didn't ask him this question on the first day, but eventually, when he chose to share, he said, well, I grew up in a household where my mom was being beat by her boyfriend, and this is, sorry. He said, this is the only thing I could do, right? In a way, that's a very instrumental, practical thing to do, is to gain the skills to defend his mother, right? But when we would do the games every week, I remember one day we did Capture the Flag, and he was just like couldn't be the happiest kid of the whole crew. And I asked him, I'm like, why do you love this game so much? He's like, I don't even care about this game. I just love doing games. And he's like, I don't really feel like I got a childhood. And I think when we get into the whole social emotional learning piece, having the context of where young people are coming from, and not just like from a clinical perspective of understanding the trauma and its expression thereof, but really understanding like from a human place, from a heart place, what does it mean to be 16 having to go to a boxing school to protect your mom, but also not really having had the chance to play. And so many of us in the room as educators, we know the importance of play, how critical our school playgrounds are for kindergartners all through, right? So, and I bring that up to say that every question that you ask, everything we're going to talk about has so many layers. But once again, it gets back to that richness of complexity. Thanks, Tish.
you know, we're in a very agricultural community, and so from my perspective, growing up, agriculture gets this really bad rep towards it. You know, it's like the one thing, if you're never gonna do anything, make sure you don't get there. And it's very heartbreaking to hear that, because at least for me, when we would go to the farm, it was this chance, this opportunity to, you know what, just leave everything outside for a couple minutes or a couple hours, I should say. Just go out there, harvest, and it really helps as a vehicle to just get in touch with yourself, right? You're out there for a couple hours just weeding, you know, your mind is just on that, and then you can drift away and start thinking about, like, oh, maybe this is what I need. So for me, it's like a very healing place. And then the whole, it's a really hard aspect, really engaged me because, you know, very competitive at times. So, so that's, it's just one of those things that you never think, oh, this is really gonna help me, but it really does help you well, at least for me, it was a very, like, okay, I'm stepping away from everything I'm dealing with right now, and I'm just gonna focus on weeding this carrot or weeding these, whatever you're weeding. It just helps you, I don't know, get in touch with yourself. That's what I really like about the farming. And now that I've stopped farming, I do miss it a lot, because I remember it was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go work at the farm. And I was happy because I was like, oh, I get to, you know, I'll forget about school for a bit. I'll forget about all these other things. And now, yeah, might go farming.
I think like similar to Uriel, like my dad was a migrant farm worker when he like first came to this country, and so for like a long time I had this like ideal that farming was like, I don't know, it was seen as like the lowest of the lowest. Like, I don't know, it wasn't something that like necessarily like I thought that would be like healing, or that I thought would be enjoyable. And because like I think there's so much like intergenerational trauma, and like recently I saw Leah Penningman speak at UCSC. She wrote a book called Farming While Black. You guys should all check that out. It's really good. And she spoke a lot about that and a lot of the trauma that goes into like just around food and around farming, and with like what our ancestors have gone through, and why people are like working in agricultural system, and how it's like seen as like a last chance thing for a lot of undocumented folks and stuff. But I think there's a lot of relationships to be rebuilt there, and there's a lot of like spaces, especially for like for the people working on the farm, that need to be like rebuilt, and there needs to be like more opportunities for them to not just come to the farm to work, but also to like, oh, like, you know, they can like grow food like from their countries that they want to grow too, like, and have a little plot of land, or like have times where they can cook like and use whatever produce they want and take food home. And I think, yeah, it's also, yeah, like there's so much like food is such a big subject, and it really like brings so many people together, and there's like so many ways to like help people like relearn their attachment with the subject, because it can be, I don't know, like my dad doesn't like talking about it until like I start talking about like eating food, and then he's like, oh yeah, like I love eating this food. But when it's like comes to talking about like working in the fields, like it's like so many hours that he had to put in, you know, and it's like not, yeah. But now like there I am, like as someone who could work at like a coffee shop or like at a bookstore, but like no, like I want to be on a farm. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? But yeah.
And A, so maybe we can take one quick one. Yes? We'll, we'll do our best. That is a beautiful question. You have 1 minute. Does anyone feel called to that question?
So, that's a really good question because I had that question a long time ago too. And more than once, I was really surprised that people are ready to listen, and especially our family members. I think the component where they're missing a lot of the time is just the education on whatever it may be, whether it's on like how much sugar beverage, a person should actually be drinking, or but people are willing to learn and listen. And more than once, I've met with people who have just been waiting for the opportunity to learn. I tell them a little thing, and then that piques their interest. And so I guess for part of my reason of wanting to be an educator, I feel like if I could educate the students, then the students can go back home and educate the parents. Because at least that's how it went for me, right? I learned all these things. I learned workshops. I even learned how to give workshops. And so the knowledge, information I got, I took it back to my family. And because my grandfather passed away from diabetes, so that's a really big thing that dawned over me once it happened to us. And then I have younger siblings, so it's a really hard disease, and we're living in a community where it's 1 in 3 will develop obesity or diabetes. And so that's our children, that's our future. That's really alarming. And so yes, we can blame the parents, we can blame the advertisements that are placed, but I feel like if we just need to give them the opportunity to make the choice. Because more than one time, I've seen people take the right decision, They just lack the resources. That's another big thing. That's another component that I've realized in our community is that, yes, we can advocate for healthy food. Yes, we can show them what is healthy. But at the end of the day, if you only make so much, you're going to pick what feeds your whole family. And that's a tough and really real conversation. I think we don't have a lot of the time, is that how accessible is healthy food for our community? And and sometimes I do feel bad talking to people in our community because, yes, I show them what is right, but at the end of the day, I know how much they're making. People claim, oh, farm workers make good money. Yes, for a month or two when the season's really high, but after that, I've seen it. I've worked with these people who, work in agriculture, and I've met friends from my parents who, they do ag for most of the year, but you can't because it rains or because, just the season doesn't go all the way around. But I feel we're in a very interesting point in time, and a point where people are demanding a change. How we're gonna get there, I'm still working on it, so I'll get back to all of you, but yeah. I think people are ready to be engaged. That's all I can say.
Okay. We probably have more questions. We're at time. We want to do one last thing before we leave this space with you. We will hang out for a little while, so if anyone has questions that you want to follow up with or email, this is a topic that we're very committed to. We feel very committed to you. So find us in one way or another. And before you leave, I'd just like to invite Irene to close us out.
Thank you. So the very last thing we're going to do is to honor the tradition of farm workers. This tradition came from the United Farm Workers, and it was a way for the Filipino farm workers to build unity and solidarity with the Mexican farm workers, and it's called the Unity Clap. And it starts with a slow clapping, and eventually it culminates into a very rapid clap. And then I will say isang baksak, which in Tagalog means one down. And that means that, one down. We take our struggle one at a time. So when I say isang baksak, we're going to just do one big clap and close it out. All right, so if you would all stand for this and join me.